In a perplexing maritime mystery that has left investigators and the public alike stunned, the lone vessel known as the Eagle Hauler was discovered in April 1998, adrift off the remote desert coastline of the Gulf of Mexico. This imposing vessel, which had become an eerie symbol of maritime enigma, was famously dubbed a ghost ship, due to the absence of any human presence on board. The Eagle Hauler, which was found to be carrying a myriad of containers filled with a diverse array of goods, including consumer products, electronics, and auto parts, left a trail of bafflement in its wake. This seemingly derelict vessel held within its metallic confines an enigma that had eluded investigators for months. The eerie tale of the Eagle Hauler began when it embarked from the bustling port of Hamburg, Germany, just a few months prior to its discovery in the Gulf of Mexico. The ship, its crew of 17 souls, and its valuable cargo had seemingly vanished into thin air, a mere week after setting sail from the European port. A massive search effort was launched, but despite extensive efforts, the ship remained elusive, with the whereabouts of the entire crew shrouded in a cloud of mystery. However, a breakthrough in unraveling the enigmatic tale came to light when a diary, meticulously maintained by Dr. John Smith, the ship's esteemed medical officer, was discovered. Dr. Smith was renowned among shipping companies for his professionalism, sharp intellect, and compassionate nature. He was a doctor who left an indelible mark on every ship he served on, earning him unwavering respect and frequent invitations to be part of various maritime ventures. It is from Dr. Smith's own words, as recorded in his diary, that we can begin to piece together the horrifying events that transpired on the Eagle Hauler following its departure from the port of Hamburg. What follows is a riveting account, transcribed from Dr. Smith's diary, of the harrowing journey of the ill-fated ship. On September 3rd, 1997, I embarked on a journey that would forever haunt my dreams. The Eagle Hauler, a massive cargo ship, sat silently in the port of Hamburg, waiting to take us into the uncharted reaches of the ocean. The sky above was a dark, foreboding blue, reminiscent of a vast velvet blanket covering our uncertain path. As I stood on the deck, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of tranquility. The crew, a collection of diverse and enigmatic individuals, had gathered to usher in the start of our long and treacherous voyage. I knew some of them by name, faces etched in memory, but not all. Among them was our captain, a man of great repute, Carl McCaw. He was a veteran of the sea, a man who had weathered countless storms and stared into the abyss, his equanimity and wisdom evident in every line etched on his face. My introduction to Captain McCaw was a memorable one, taking place at one of the raucous sailors' parties that seemed like a distant memory now. He had a magnetic presence that drew people to him, and after that unforgettable evening, he had extended an invitation to me to join his crew. At the time, I thought it was a good deal. The rest of the crew, a motley assortment of characters, remained shrouded in mystery. I knew I would have the duration of this voyage to unravel the enigmas that surrounded them. September 4th, 1997, dawned with an air of expectancy aboard the Eagle Hauler. The light of a new day revealed a crew as diverse as the tempestuous sea itself. As we prepared to embark on this journey, the faces of my fellow sailors took on new meaning, each with a different story to tell. Captain Carl McCaw, the steely-eyed master of our vessel, commanded respect and reverence. He was the beacon of our ship, responsible for navigation, issuing commands, and liaising with the port authorities. His wisdom and experience were evident in every word he spoke. A true mariner, in every sense. The chain of command extended to First Mate Captain Anna Smith, a woman whose reputation for reliability and exceptional navigational skills preceded her. Second Mate John Reynolds, with his weathered features and a deep well of experience, was always ready to lend a hand at the helm. His dedication to the crew and his unwavering determination made him an invaluable member of our seafaring family. Among the sailors, Luke Jones and Carl Hope were the heart and soul of our crew. Luke's sense of humor was a beacon of light in the often dark world of a long-haul sailor. His laughter was infectious, and his stories of the sea kept our spirits high. Carl, on the other hand, was a bundle of boundless energy, an ever-friendly presence that brightened our days. Below deck, we had the machinists, Michael Brown and Sarah Wilson. Michael, the chief machinist, possessed a silent determination that bordered on grimness. His technical prowess was unquestionable, and in the face of mechanical challenges, he was unwavering. Sarah, his assistant, had an air of quiet confidence about her, a reserve that hinted at a depth of knowledge waiting to be tapped. The stewards and galley attendants, Lisa Martin and David Wallace, ensured that the crew was well fed and cared for. Electrical engineers Alexandra Harper and Daniel Zhao were the guardians of our ship's power. Their technical expertise was crucial, ensuring that our lights and systems continued to function smoothly. Navigators Richard Jones and Allison Carter were the cartographers of our destiny, guiding us through uncharted waters with precision and care. Meteorologist James Smith kept an eye on the ever-changing moods of the skies, offering vital information to Captain McCow. The meteorologist's predictions often meant the difference between safety and peril on our journey. And finally, shipping agent Linda Wilson, the organizer of all port services, logistics, and financial matters. Her role was very important in making sure our voyages went smoothly. In the depths of the ship, we were joined by fellow longshoremen Mark Stevens and Drake. These two rugged individuals were the backbone of our crew, toiling tirelessly to ensure the cargo was loaded and unloaded efficiently. I had my assistant nurse, Natalie, with me. We had been working together for quite some time. She is a professional. As a doctor, my role was to know every member of the crew intimately, to be their confidant, their healer. September 5th, 1997, presented itself as a day brimming with both possibilities and curiosities. The crew of the Eagle Howler remained in good health, leaving me with ample time to delve deeper into the mysteries of our ship. My passion for the sea had only intensified over the years, a burning desire that had led me to the deck of this impressive vessel. As a child, I had dreamt of becoming a ship's captain, but the ironclad will of my father had steered me down a different path, and I found myself studying to become a doctor. Yet, the allure of the open ocean had never left me, and the call of the sea still echoed in my soul. This voyage offered me a chance, albeit in a different capacity, to satisfy my longing for maritime life. My thirst for knowledge led me to explore the Eagle Hauler in great detail. It was a ship that embodied modernity and technology, a behemoth equipped with the latest state-of-the-art systems. I reveled in the opportunity to dissect its inner workings. Our navigation equipment was second to none, featuring GPS systems and electronic charts that ensured precise positioning and routing. Radars and anti-collision systems stood vigilant, constantly scanning the horizon for potential threats and ensuring the safety of our voyage. Automated course control and vessel stabilization systems made for a smooth and efficient journey, even in the roughest of waters. The engine room revealed powerful and efficient engines, their operation overseen by advanced control systems designed to optimize fuel consumption. Computers monitored every aspect of the ship's mechanical systems, their constant vigilance a testament to our commitment to safety and efficiency. The electrical power equipment was equally impressive, boasting power generators with emergency switching and redundancy capabilities to guarantee an uninterrupted power supply. The ship's state-of-the-art communication and navigation systems included radio systems for contact with other vessels and shore stations, as well as satellite communication systems for voice and data transmission in remote maritime regions. Safety remained paramount, with modern firefighting and emergency alert systems in place to protect both the crew and our precious cargo. Tracking and access control measures were implemented to deter unauthorized entry and ensure our ship's security. But what truly left an indelible impression on me was the lifting equipment. Modern cranes, forklifts, and various other devices designed for the efficient loading and unloading of cargo. As I explored further, I even came across automation systems that controlled the ship, including autopilot and energy management systems. It was with a hint of jest that I remarked to Captain McCaw that with such advanced equipment, one might wonder if the role of captain and crew would become obsolete, replaced by artificial intelligence and automation. The captain's response was a grim chuckle, and he cautioned me not to underestimate the power of the sea. The ocean, he said, had a way of revealing its true nature when least expected, no matter how advanced the technology at our disposal. I took his words to heart, sensing an unspoken truth lurking beneath the surface. Entry dated September 7th, 1997. As the first week of our voyage unfolded, The Eagle hauler cut through the waters without incident, the vast expanse of the ocean stretching out in all directions. A sense of routine settled over the crew as everyone diligently carried out their duties. The ship's advanced technology hummed in the background, a testament to human innovation and the indomitable spirit of exploration. All seemed well, and there was no sign of impending trouble. However, it was on a dark and eerily calm night that the first tendrils of unease began to weave their way into the tapestry of our journey. Murmurs among the crew members gave voice to unsettling tales of strange noises emanating from the depths of the ship. But it was not just the spectral specters of the night that would disturb our peace. A fortuitous celebration, the meteorologist James Smith's birthday party, brought an unforeseen consequence. James, reveling in the festivities, indulged in more libations than his body could handle. He awoke the next day with a throbbing headache and a gnawing sense of regret. His hangover had clouded his judgment, leading us to overlook the approach of a major storm, a tempest that should have set off alarms. The storm raged with a ferocity that tested the mettle of our ship and crew. The Eagle hauler was tossed and turned in the tumultuous sea, its massive bulk at the mercy of the elements. We emerged from the maelstrom battered but intact, though the ship bore the scars of the ordeal. The state-of-the-art equipment that had once been our pride now lay in disarray, a broken link to the world beyond. Communication with the shore was severed, a consequence of the tempest's wrath. The captain, ever stoic, was not one to entertain excuses. He demanded that the problem be resolved with utmost urgency. However, for reasons that remained shrouded in mystery, the ship's cutting-edge technology eluded our grasp. It was either too advanced for our engineers to fathom, or the necessary spare parts for repair were nowhere to be found. The isolation we experienced was growing, the tendrils of the unknown weaving their way into our lives. It was among the loading crew, the men who toiled in the shadow of the cargo, that the most disturbing whispers surfaced. They claimed to have seen a massive lurking shadow moving among the crates and containers. Their accounts were met with skepticism by the captain, who believed that fatigue and fear could play tricks on the mind. However, for the sake of safety, he ordered a vigilant watch over the ship's cameras, and a strict mandate against wandering the ship alone. Entry dated September 10th, 1997. A somber cloud descended upon the Eagle hauler in the wake of the relentless storm. Days blurred into one another as we navigated the unpredictable waters of the Atlantic Ocean, each sunrise and sunset a reminder of our isolation. The situation on the ship grew grimmer by the hour, as a pervasive sense of unease took hold. It was a few days after the storm when a disquieting revelation struck the heart of our already troubled crew. The news swept through the ship. Agent Linda Wilson was missing. She hadn't been seen in days, and her absence was marked by untouched items in her quarters. Linda was last seen leaving the mess hall, her figure slowly disappearing into the darkness. Concern etched lines on Captain Carl McCaw's face as I approached him, seeking answers to the disquieting mystery. "We've looked everywhere for her, John," he confessed, his voice heavy with worry. "No sign of her. It's as if Linda just disappeared into thin air. It's unlikely she fell overboard. I'd even say it's impossible." I couldn't help but question the ship's surveillance system, which boasted an array of cameras. Surely they would have recorded something, shedding light on Linda's disappearance. But Captain McCaw's response was disheartening. The storm wreaked havoc on the surveillance system. Half the cameras are out of commission, and the rest only show static. To make matters worse, our communications are still down. This is unprecedented in all my years at sea, John. Desperation and dread gnawed at the edges of our collective psyche as we grappled with the inexplicable disappearance of one of our own. Within a day of Linda's vanishing, an unsettling discovery was made. Her ID and watch were found abandoned behind a maze of pipes near the engine room. The circumstances surrounding how her belongings ended up there were a haunting enigma. No one had seen anything, and the lack of functional cameras in that part of the ship meant that the shadows held their secrets close. And yet it will remain a strange, terrifying dream. Soon, according to our itinerary, we must complete this journey and reach the port of New York. September 14th, and our voyage across the vast expanse of the ocean continued without an end in sight. The journey had become an interminable stretch of time, and the arrival in port, which should have occurred days ago, remained elusive. A heavy shroud of uncertainty enveloped the ship, a palpable tension that infected the crew. The silence of the captain, Carl McCaw, hung like a cloud over the vessel, leaving an eerie void where reassurance should have been. The crew, once a cohesive unit, was now a collection of nervous glances and hushed conversations. The anxiety in the air was as thick as the sea spray that lashed our decks. The unanswered question of our prolonged journey loomed large, gnawing at the fringes of my mind. When I sought explanations from the crew, they were as lost as I was. Frustration and fear painted their faces, and they all pointed to the captain and his closest aides for answers. I decided to confront the source of our collective disquiet and make my way to the captain's quarters. But fate intervened, leading me to eavesdrop on a conversation between our first mate, Anna Smith, and the second mate, John Reynolds. Their voices were hushed, their words laden with apprehension. They discussed a navigational error that had led our ship astray. John Reynolds questioned the autopilot's involvement in such a grave miscalculation. He suspected that someone, with nefarious intentions, had tampered with the system, deliberately altering our course. It was a revelation that sent a chill down my spine. The gravity of the situation struck me, and I understood that they were laboring to restore the autopilot system, attempting to guide us back to our original route. Another disturbing revelation emerged from their conversation: the disappearance of steward David Wallace. His belongings, they said, had been discovered behind the water supply bay, a bloody testament to an unknown horror. The unease that gripped my heart had deepened into a sense of foreboding that seemed inescapable. Though I had stumbled upon this conversation by chance, I could not remain silent. My duty as a doctor and a member of this crew compelled me to confront the captain and seek answers. When I approached him, Carl McCaw waved me off dismissively, his words laden with an air of reassurance that did little to dispel the pervasive darkness. September 16th, and the descent into darkness on the Eagle Howler took a malevolent turn. The veil of dread that had wrapped itself around the ship thickened with each passing day. My assistant nurse Natalie was the latest victim of this sinister force that seemed to lurk among us. First Assistant Captain Anna Smith, bearing witness to a nightmarish ordeal, reported hearing blood-curdling screams echoing through the hallways. She rushed to the source of the screams, but upon arrival found nothing but an empty, eerie silence. Electricians Alexandra Harper and Daniel Zhao, disturbed by the same cries, joined the frantic search. The trio discovered drops of blood forming a gruesome trail, leading them to a nightmarish scene. Natalie's femur had been torn from her body by unimaginable force, leaving a horrific tableau of terror. The rest of her was nowhere to be found. I wept for my lost companion, for Natalie and I had shared years of service, and her absence left a void in my heart. The realization struck us with a force that threatened to drown us all in a sea of horror. The perpetrator of these atrocities was among us, a silent specter hidden in plain sight. The panic that had gripped the ship was a contagion that spread from soul to soul. As a doctor, I knew the perils of prolonged isolation and severed communication with the outside world. Such conditions could gnaw at the edges of sanity, inviting the abyss of mental instability. I ventured my theory to Captain Carl McCaw, who admitted to sharing my concerns. He proposed a preventative measure, a collective conversation with the crew. In the midst of this nightmarish uncertainty, it was a glimmer of hope. A forum for the crew to share their fears and perhaps, just perhaps, unveil the face of Natalie's murderer among us. It was a surprising turn of events. The once stubborn captain had conceded his earlier attempts to withhold information, realizing that transparency was our only weapon against the darkness that had enveloped us. The eerie darkness that had enshrouded the Eagle Hauler extended into the early morning of September 17th. Captain Carl McCaw and I embarked on a grim endeavor, individually calling each crew member for discussions. While I lacked the qualifications of a medical psychologist, my basic knowledge allowed me to pose pertinent questions, recording their answers and scrutinizing their behavior for any telltale signs of disturbance. As the interviews progressed, a disconcerting uniformity emerged. The crew members went about their duties diligently, their composure intact. They had not exhibited any sense of loneliness or despair prior to the spate of disappearances that had cast its shadow over our journey. There was a collective belief that our ordeal would soon come to an end when we reached port. Hope was a fragile ember struggling to ignite against the encroaching darkness. However, a recurring theme emerged during these conversations, one that sent shivers down my spine. Many of the crew members insisted they had heard strange, disquieting noises at night. The captain and I had not personally experienced these sounds, but the persistence and consistency of the claims were unsettling. The cargo crew, the captain's aides, and even the meteorologist attested to the eerie cacophony that pervaded the ship after dark. 2 crew members drew our attention, sparking unease within the crew. Drake, one of the cargo crew, maintained that a malevolent, black entity stalked the ship, feasting upon the crew in the dead of night. He claimed to have witnessed it and had attempted to share his revelation with others, but they dismissed his words as the ramblings of a terrified mind. Drake's fear was palpable, rendering him a near recluse who cowered within his quarters. We had to convince him, almost forcibly, to join our conversation. The second individual who aroused suspicion was the machinist, Michael Brown. Always reserved and distant from the rest of the crew, he exhibited nervous behavior during the conversation. His statements were disjointed and contradictory, casting a sinister shadow over his demeanor. The captain and I shared our concerns regarding Mikhail's behavior, recognizing it as a potential lead to uncovering the truth behind the ship's descent into madness. Following the preventative conversations, Captain Macau and I made the unsettling decision to closely monitor Drake and Michael. Their peculiar behavior and the disquieting claims they had made demanded our attention. September 19th, and the situation aboard the Eagle Hauler had spiraled into chaos. It became increasingly evident that the specter of madness had infiltrated our ship, sowing discord and mistrust among the crew. We weren't the only ones who suspected Michael the machinist. Others had noticed his erratic behavior, and Alexander Harper, an electrical engineer, had stumbled upon a disturbing secret. In a bold revelation, Harper disclosed that he had witnessed Michael hiding something within the confines of his cabin. The gravity of this revelation was undeniable, and it led to a fateful decision. Captain McCaw and I took it upon ourselves to investigate Michael's quarters and found some of the missing steward's belongings. Why had Michael hidden this undeniable evidence of his guilt? I could not find an answer to this question. Apparently, traveling by sea had negatively affected Michael's psyche, and he was no longer responsible for his actions, could not think straight. While the investigation continued within the confines of Michael's cabin, turmoil erupted on the ship. Luke Jones, one of the sailors, descended into a frenzy, intent on delivering a savage beating to the beleaguered machinist. It was a violent outbreak that threatened to escalate into a ship-wide lynching, had it not been for the timely intervention of First Mate Anna Smith. In the wake of this chaotic scene, we were left with no alternative but to take Michael into custody. The crew assigned themselves in shifts to guard him, understanding that the darkness that had consumed one of our own could just as easily take hold of others. As we sailed onward, the prevailing hope was that the worst of the ordeal had passed, and the journey to port would proceed without further accidents or disappearances. However, the oppressive atmosphere that had taken root within the ship continued to linger, like an unrelenting fog that obscured the path to salvation. September 21st century. The horrors on the Eagle Hauler seemed to possess an insatiable appetite for darkness, as they refused to release their grip on our ship. Luke Jones, the formidable sailor who had once sought vengeance against Michael, had now become the latest victim of the malevolent force that stalked us. Luke was a behemoth of a man, towering in stature and possessing the strength of a titan. In his youth, he had made a name for himself in the brutal world of professional bare-knuckle fighting. It was difficult to fathom who or what could overpower a man of his stature. Panic and desperation ensued as we combed the ship in search of the missing sailor. Our quest ended in a gruesome discovery that sent shivers down our spines. Luke's lifeless body had been reduced to a macabre tapestry of carnage. His once mighty form lay torn asunder, bearing wounds that appeared to have been inflicted by a savage, wild animal. As I examined the gruesome remnants of the man I had known, I couldn't help but entertain the horrifying notion that Drake's ramblings might hold a kernel of truth. Perhaps, in the shadowy recesses of the ship, an evil force, something beyond our comprehension, was lurking. Michael, the machinist who had been under close surveillance for a full day, was now absolved of suspicion. The evidence of his guilt had unraveled, leaving him innocent but still under careful watch. The situation remained dire, and the captain and I grappled with the realization that the malevolent presence among us remained elusive. Trapped in the boundless expanse of the unforgiving ocean, cut off from the outside world and devoid of functioning communication equipment, we were at the mercy of an unseen predator. The surveillance cameras remained dormant, the autopilot malfunctioned, and the ocean's vastness offered no escape. Our tormentor, whether a sinister entity or a cunning individual, reveled in the cat-and-mouse game, savoring the despair that had settled upon the Eagle Howler. September 26th entry marked the descent into a maelstrom of madness and terror aboard the Eagle Hauler. The malevolent force that had been haunting us showed no respite, and the frequency of disappearances escalated to an alarming degree. First, it was the navigators who vanished into the abyss of the ship's corridors. Then, the second mate of the captain followed, vanishing without a trace. In the wake of these eerie disappearances, one of the loaders met a similar fate. John, our trusted meteorologist, went missing next, leaving us without the guidance of his expertise. The grim pattern of disappearance continued, when one of the electricians, Alexander, undertook a perilous journey to repair the faltering communication equipment. He never had the chance to complete his task, and at the sight of his vanishing, we were greeted with a haunting message daubed in blood upon the walls. Games are over. With each passing day, the crew grew more reclusive, retreating to their cabins in a desperate bid to escape the clutches of the malevolent presence that lurked aboard the ship. The vessel itself had become a labyrinth of fear, devoid of functioning navigational systems and plagued by a malfunctioning autopilot. The captain, once our beacon of leadership, was now lost in a storm of technical malfunctions and panic. Nature itself seemed to have turned against us as we found ourselves ensnared by another raging storm. The tempest howled outside, a malevolent chorus that mirrored the terror that had gripped our hearts. I, too, was overwhelmed by fear, cowering within my cabin, dreading the moment when the unseen predator would come for me. The captain had intended to gather us all in a single room, seeking safety in numbers and the opportunity for collective vigilance. But his plan remained unrealized, for he, too, succumbed to the relentless tide of disappearances. His absence left us adrift, our once unshakable leader vanishing into the abyss. None of us dared to venture in search of him, weighed down by the looming specter of our own impending doom. It was First Mate Anna Smith and I who summoned the courage to embark on the perilous quest to locate our captain. September 29th. Our quest to find the captain ended in horror. We discovered only a gruesome relic of his presence, a severed head with part of his face gnawed away. The wall beside his remains bore a macabre message written in blood. "Your dessert." The chilling words sent shivers down our spines, and we understood that our tormentor reveled in terrorizing us. First Mate Anna Smith was visibly horrified by the gruesome discovery, and she urged us to heed the captain's plan. Gather all remaining crew members in the common room of the mess hall. Through the radio room, we broadcast the call, hoping to unite all who remained. However, by evening, only 5 of us had braved the gathering. Anna, the previously suspected machinist Michael, second electrician Daniel Zhao, and sailor Carl Hope. The whereabouts of the other crew members remained a mystery, leaving us to speculate whether they were missing or cowering in their cabins, paralyzed by fear. Anna and I recognized the necessity of taking turns on duty, for trust had eroded to the point of near extinction. While I harbored some level of trust for Anna, doubts lingered, particularly in regard to Michael. We wrestled with the disconcerting possibility that the murderer could be among us, or that the enigmatic, unholy entity Drake had warned about was real and lurking somewhere aboard the vessel. Drake himself had vanished, adding another layer of uncertainty to our dire predicament. The Eagle Hauler, once a vessel of purpose, had transformed into a foreboding trap, setting sail on an unknown course. The 5 of us, huddled in the dimly lit mess hall, trembled with fear and paranoia. I clung to my diary as a thread of sanity in the unraveling tapestry of terror that enshrouded us. We had no inkling of how long we could endure this nightmare, but one thing was certain. We were determined not to become the next course in this sinister feast. October 1st. I was jarred awake by a blood-curdling scream, a sound that sent shivers through my already frayed nerves. In a surreal, nightmarish scene, I witnessed something unimaginable. Zhao, the second electrician, under attack. A dark, massive, and furry assailant tore at his flesh, clawing viciously at his legs. Zhao's agonized screams pierced the air as this monstrous entity dragged him away, disappearing down the shadowy corridor. Panic gripped me as I scanned the room for Anna, Michael, or some semblance of an explanation. Yet Anna was nowhere to be found, and Michael's absence added to the mounting unease. Carl, who sat beside me, seemed in a trance, repeating the word werewolf in a trembling voice. My futile attempts to rouse him and inquire about Anna's whereabouts yielded no response. In a shocking turn of events, Carl abruptly stood, seized a knife, and with a rapid, deliberate motion slit his own throat. His blood sprayed across my face, an eerie baptism of terror. Stunned and horrified by Carl's inexplicable act, I was temporarily immobilized. It wasn't until Drake materialized seemingly out of nowhere that I was yanked from the grip of shock. He urged me to act, insisting that we had to flee. My initial bewilderment gave way to the sheer urgency of the situation, and I followed him without hesitation. The sole question echoing in my mind was, "Where is Anna?" Drake, my newfound guide in this nightmarish scenario, led me to a hidden technical compartment within the ship. He swiftly opened an iron grate cover, revealing a narrow passage leading downward. My confusion and fear rendered me entirely reliant on Drake's guidance, and I followed him blindly through this labyrinth of pipes and iron beams. After a lengthy descent, we arrived at a concealed chamber that had served as Drake's refuge. Surrounded by bars and metal, this hidden enclave was indiscernible from the outside. However, the true horror lay within, as Drake revealed the mountain of human bones that had amassed over time. The sheer sight of it sent shivers down my spine, and I recoiled in terror. Drake's laughter rang out, an eerie sound that seemed tinged with madness. My instinct was to retreat, as I feared that I had been lured into a trap, and that Drake intended to add me to the grisly collection of remains. However, Drake dispelled my fears, insisting that he harbored no sinister intent. He explained that this chamber was a sanctuary, a haven of safety from the malevolent entities that had laid waste to the ship. Drake's frenzied narrative unveiled a horrifying tale. He claimed that we were situated above the creature's nest, safe because the overpowering stench of decay masked our human scent. He spoke with the fervor of one who had defied these horrors and lived to tell the tale. Drake insisted that he had outwitted these monsters, demonstrating a dark determination to assert his newfound authority. When I inquired about his experiences, Drake cryptically alluded to having seen everything, and declared himself the new captain, asserting that his word was law. The realization that my sanity teetered on the brink sent a cold shiver down my spine, as the boundaries of reality and nightmarish fantasy blurred in the hellish bowels of the ship. Date unknown time has become an abstract concept. I am adrift in a sea of eternal night. Drake and I spent what felt like an eternity within the confines of our refuge. Days blurred into one another as our provisions dwindled, and desperation crept in. It was then that Drake, his sanity waning, attempted to end my life in a futile bid to survive. A brutal struggle ensued, and by some miraculous twist of fate, I managed to thwart his murderous intent. In the throes of despair, Drake experienced a sudden, inexplicable revelation. Whether it was a brush with death or the consequences of dehydration, his mind, for a fleeting moment, regained clarity. His dark intentions evaporated, replaced by a grim determination to venture into the ship in search of sustenance for both of us. With newfound resolve, he departed, leaving me in the confines of our shelter. The hours, days, or perhaps even weeks that followed passed in agonizing isolation. I clung to the bars that separated me from the rest of the forsaken vessel, yearning for Drake's return, when at last a distant noise disrupted the eerie silence. I strained my eyes and ears to discern its source. Slowly, the shapes of two nightmarish creatures materialized, gnawing ravenously on a macabre feast, Drake's lifeless body. Their monstrous hunger satiated, the creatures succumbed to exhaustion and, with haunting transformation, shifted from beast to human. I watched, transfixed by horror and disbelief, as Michael and Anna emerged from the bestial transformation. These monstrous creatures that had haunted our hellish voyage were none other than my former shipmates. Michael stirred first, rousing Anna from her feral slumber. Their whispers sent shivers down my spine, for it was a cruel revelation of evil. Anna contended that I might have leaped into the unforgiving embrace of the open ocean, mimicking the fate of second mate John Reynolds. Michael, on the other hand, said that I was hiding somewhere, and by all means he wanted to find me and catch me, that he still really wanted his dessert. A chilling declaration left no room for doubt. Their sinister exchange of sibling-like camaraderie revealed the true extent of the horror that had consumed them. But the most chilling realization of all was that I no longer cared for my fate. In the shadow of death, I found solace in knowing that I had not become the cannibalistic monster's dessert. Last diary entry. Dad, you were right. I should have just worked at the hospital as a regular doctor. In the dimly lit sanctuary of my study, I faced the torment of my own creation. A writer's worst nightmare had me firmly in its grasp, the dreaded writer's block. My name is Kevin Stanley, and I have spent years weaving tales of terror and horror. But now, I found myself entangled in a web of my own making. Outside my study window, the world carried on oblivious to my turmoil. The incessant tapping of the keyboard echoed through the room, each keystroke a reminder of my inability to conjure the next chapter of my popular horror series. My publisher's relentless demands for a faster delivery had become the vultures circling over my creative corpse. I gazed at the shelves that lined my study, my eyes skimming over the spine of every classic horror novel. The ghosts of literary giants seemed to taunt me, their works a testament to the heights of terror that I once effortlessly scaled. Now, I stood at the precipice of a seemingly insurmountable writer's block, unable to take the next step into the abyss. My friend Bill Verdon, a fellow writer with a penchant for the macabre, had sensed my desperation. Over a late-night whiskey, he whispered of a place that had ignited a spark of curiosity within me, a spark that I hoped would be the key to unlocking my creativity. Bill spoke of an abandoned mansion, a decaying relic on the outskirts of town. This mansion had a history steeped in darkness and tragedy. It was once owned by a meat magnate named Chester, a man of wealth and privilege. He shared this opulent home with his wife and 2 children, a boy and a girl. Their lives had been a picture of happiness until a deadly disease ravaged the state, a plague carried by the tainted meat Chester sold. It led to his financial ruin, turning the mansion into a haunting reminder of his fall from grace. In the depths of despair, Chester had committed a heinous act, one that defied reason and humanity. He had taken the lives of his beloved family, their blood staining the walls of the mansion. In a final act of madness, he had turned the gun on himself, ending his torment and sealing the mansion's grim fate. Since that day, the mansion had stood abandoned, a spectral monument to a family's tragedy. But as with any place steeped in darkness, rumors and legends had taken root. Whispers spoke of a curse, a malevolent force that dwelled within the mansion's crumbling walls. Those who ventured inside were said to vanish without a trace, swallowed by the same abyss that had consumed Chester and his family. As Bill recounted these chilling tales, my skepticism wavered. Years of immersing myself in the darkest recesses of human psychology had left me desensitized to superstitions. I had explored haunted asylums, wandered through forgotten graveyards, and spent nights in the most ominous of places without encountering anything beyond the bounds of reality. Yet, the story of Chester's mansion had kindled a peculiar fascination within me, a perverse curiosity that danced with the embers of my dormant creativity. It was an opportunity to confront the supernatural firsthand, to embrace the legends and rumors that had clung to the mansion like a shroud. Perhaps, within its shadowed chambers, I would find the inspiration I so desperately sought. The journey to the mansion had been long, stretching across 2 days of winding roads and overgrown paths that led to the small town nestled amidst the dense forest. The sun hung high in the noonday sky when I finally arrived, my car parked in front of the looming edifice. The mansion, with its grandeur and history, loomed before me, a haunting beauty that defied time and decay. I stepped out of my car, my eyes tracing the intricate details of the mansion's facade. It was a structure that had once been a testament to opulence, a symbol of a family's prosperity and happiness. Now, it stood as a melancholic relic, its windows shattered and boarded up, its walls bearing the weight of neglect. Despite the ominous aura that clung to the mansion, I felt an undeniable sense of awe. The mansion's size and beauty were undeniable, and I couldn't help but be captivated by the haunting allure of its architecture. I didn't rush inside right away. Instead, I decided to explore the abandoned courtyard and garden that had once been a source of joy and serenity. As I entered the garden, a profound sadness washed over me. The passage of time had been unkind to this once vibrant place. The fountain, which had once glistened with crystal-clear water, now lay dormant and broken, a casualty of neglect. The brick paths, once meticulously maintained, had succumbed to the relentless march of nature, their surfaces marred by cracks and weeds pushing through the gaps. The garden, once teeming with life and color, was now a wilderness of overgrown bushes and unruly weeds. It was a stark reminder of the passage of time, a testament to the mansion's descent into desolation. My footsteps crunched on the dry leaves and brittle branches that littered the ground as I ventured deeper into the garden's heart. Amidst the tangle of greenery, I stumbled upon an old swing, its chains rusted and creaking with age. Nearby, an ancient, deflated leather ball lay forgotten, a relic of happier days. I couldn't help but imagine the laughter of children that had once filled the air, the echoes of their joy now silenced by the passage of years. With a heavy heart, I left the garden behind and made my way to the mansion's entrance. The crumbling facade gave way to a dusty interior, where the echoes of a bygone era still lingered. The floors bore the scars of time, their surfaces covered in a thick layer of dirt and dust. Some rooms were in a state of disrepair, their furniture broken and strewn haphazardly about. Evidence of recent visitors was scattered throughout the mansion. Traces of a fire lingered in one corner, cigarette butts and wrappers from various fast foods scattered about. It seemed that homeless individuals or adventurous students had occasionally sought refuge within these haunted walls, their presence leaving behind tangible reminders. I continued down the dimly lit hallway, my footsteps echoing through the mansion's abandoned chambers. The eerie stillness of the place hung in the air, broken only by the faint creaking of the old floorboards beneath my feet. The mansion whispered tales of its own, each room a canvas upon which stories of love, despair, and tragedy had been painted. Another horror story began to take shape in my imagination, and the mansion itself became a character in the narrative I was creating. I couldn't wait to settle down in one of the abandoned rooms, to let inspiration overwhelm me, and I opened my laptop to breathe life into the chilling story that was slowly unfolding before me. The mansion's interior was a labyrinth of grandeur and decay, far larger than it had appeared from the outside. I wandered through its echoing hallways, my mind consumed by thoughts of the horror novel that was slowly taking shape in my imagination. I had lost track of time and distance, and it was only when I reached the far end of the third-floor corridor that I realized how far I had ventured. My attention was drawn to a closed door, standing alone in the dimly lit hallway. It struck me as peculiar, for most of the mansion's rooms had been left open to the ravages of time. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the door, my hand reaching out to turn the tarnished doorknob. To my surprise, the door refused to yield. I tried several more times, but it remained steadfastly closed. Frustration welled within me, but I decided to leave my attempts for the moment. There was the matter of a mattress to attend to, one I had left in my car, intending to spend the night within the mansion's eerie confines. As I turned away from the enigmatic door, I was struck by an eerie sensation, a sensation that sent a shiver down my spine. The silence of the mansion was shattered by the distinct sound of creaking wood. My heart raced, and I turned sharply to face the source of the sound. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the door to the mysterious room swinging open, of its own accord. A soft, yellow light spilled out into the hallway, casting long, distorted shadows across the faded wallpaper. Fear gripped me, and I swallowed hard, my throat dry and constricted. Intrigued and unnerved in equal measure, I couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. I approached the room cautiously, my footsteps barely audible on the aged floorboards. I peered through the doorway, my eyes widening in surprise and confusion. Inside the room, there were two neatly made beds, each adorned with pristine, folded baby clothes. One set of clothing was clearly for a boy, while the other was for a girl. The room was unlike any other in the mansion. It was immaculate, untouched by the ravages of time, There was no dust, no dirt, and all the furniture stood intact. It was as though this room had been carefully maintained and watched over, a stark contrast to the decrepit state of the rest of the mansion. A wave of unease washed over me, and I felt a cold, sweet bead on my forehead. I decided it was best to leave the room unattended. I took a hesitant step backward and stepped away from the doorway. I wanted to separate myself from this strange room. I quickened my pace, and my footsteps echoed in the hallway as I moved farther and farther away from the strange children's room. Yet, no matter how far I walked, the sense of unease clung to me like a shadow. I pushed aside the unsettling thoughts that had begun to gnaw at me and attempted to focus on the one thing that had brought me here: the need to find inspiration for my novel. I needed to start writing, to delve into the dark recesses of my imagination and bring my story to life. But then, the ominous creaking of the door shattered my concentration once more. My heart raced as I turned around to see the door swinging open yet again. How was this possible? I had distanced myself from that strange children's room, yet here I was, inexplicably drawn back to it. A growing sense of dread twisted my insides as I peered through the open door. The room lay before me, unchanged from when I had last seen it. A pristine tableau of neatly made beds and folded baby clothes. The eerie familiarity of the scene sent shivers down my spine, and I was tormented by questions that had no answers. I made a decision to retreat once more, to put as much distance as I could between myself and that baffling room. I started to walk briskly, and then, almost instinctively, I broke into a run. The hallway stretched endlessly before me, a labyrinthine maze that refused to yield an exit. No matter how fast or how far I ran, the corridor seemed to stretch on infinitely. The echoing sound of the door creaking behind me sent a shiver down my spine, and I dared to look over my shoulder. To my horror, the children's room had reappeared once again, as though mocking my futile escape attempts. Panic gripped me, and my breath came in ragged gasps. This was beyond anything I had ever experienced in my life. I was confronted with a situation that defied all reason, a supernatural phenomenon that left me bewildered and terrified. I had always been a skeptic, a rationalist who scoffed at tales of the paranormal, but there was no denying the reality unfolding before me. With my mind clouded by fear and confusion, I resorted to desperate measures. I sprinted down the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. I needed to find an escape, a way out of this nightmare. My heart pounded in my chest as I searched for stairs that would lead me back to the ground floor. But no matter how far I ran, the corridor remained unyielding, stretching endlessly before me like a malevolent force. The door creaked open once more, and I turned to see the children's room, its presence an unrelenting specter that haunted my every step. Panic overwhelmed me, and I began to feel a suffocating sense of dread. I didn't know what to do next. I was trapped in a nightmarish loop with no apparent escape. It was a sensation of helplessness I had never experienced before. Desperation drove me to try the windows, but my efforts were in vain. Every window on the third floor of the mansion was boarded up, as if to seal off any hope of escape. I tugged and pulled at the boards with all my strength, but they remained firmly in place, as though the very mansion itself conspired to imprison me within its walls. The realization that I was trapped, at the mercy of forces beyond my understanding, sent a chill down my spine. I was no longer the master of my own fate, and the creeping terror of the unknown tightened its grip on my soul. Fear had taken firm hold of me, its icy fingers wrapping around my racing heart. I continued to sprint down the seemingly endless corridor, my eyes darting around frantically for any sign of escape. The oppressive sense of entrapment weighed on me, and every passing second seemed to stretch into eternity. I came to an abrupt stop, desperation driving me to find a solution to my predicament. I knew I couldn't enter that mysterious children's room, as an unshakable sense of foreboding warned me that something terrible lurked within. Instead, I needed to flee, to put as much distance as I could between myself and that sinister doorway. My thoughts raced, a frantic whirlwind of anxiety and panic. Then, as I scanned the floor, my eyes fell upon something that sent shivers down my spine. Among the footprints that belonged to me, my own boot prints, there were other prints, animal prints. They were fresh, as if some creature had been running alongside me on the third-floor hallway. The realization struck me like a thunderbolt. I was not alone. There was something else here, something otherworldly, chasing me through the darkened corridors of the mansion. The fear that had already consumed me deepened it, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. As I stared at the animal tracks it shed into the dusty floor, the sense of dread intensified. The tracks were unmistakably those of a dog, though unlike any dog I had ever encountered. I dared not linger too long on this unnerving discovery. The door to the children's room creaked open once more, breaking through my frantic thoughts. I turned to see the door swing wide, beckoning me toward it with an almost malevolent insistence. Without hesitation, I bolted away from the room, my footsteps echoing through the hallway as I ran. I ran with all the strength and endurance I could muster, my lungs burning with exertion, my thirst gnawing at my throat. I knew that if I stopped, if I allowed myself a moment's respite, I would find myself once again in the clutches of that accursed room. The minutes stretched into a torturous eternity as I pushed my body to its limits. I couldn't run indefinitely, and at last, I was forced to stop. I leaned heavily against the cold, unforgiving wall, gasping for breath, my heart pounding like a drum. As I regained my composure, I realized that the floor beneath me bore more footprints, my own and those of the mysterious animal. It was as though the creature had been chasing me relentlessly, its presence an ominous shadow at my heels. The sheer terror of my situation threatened to overwhelm me once more. I was trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth, pursued by an entity I couldn't comprehend. The door to the children's room creaked open yet again. The open door leading to the children's room beckoned me once more, but something had drastically changed. The soft yellow light that had previously bathed the room in an eerie glow had transformed into a menacing red. A sense of foreboding gripped me as I stood frozen in fear, my ragged breaths filling the tense silence. Despite the overwhelming dread, curiosity got the better of me, and I began to inch closer to the children's room. Every step I took felt like a leaden weight, and the heavy thud of my heart echoed in my ears. I approached the doorway and cautiously peered inside. What I saw within the room froze the blood in my veins. The walls, the floor, everything was covered in blood. The once neatly folded baby clothes lay strewn on the floor, soaked in crimson. The entire room seemed like a nightmarish canvas painted with the macabre hue of death. A horrified gasp escaped my lips, and I quickly covered my mouth to stifle the urge to vomit. As I stood there, paralyzed by the gruesome tableau before me, a sinister rustling sound filled the air. I turned my gaze to the dresser, where a music box sat. Its lid had sprung open, and an ominous melody emanated from within the room, casting eerie notes into the hallway. I took a step back, my heart pounding, as the haunting music filled my ears and seemed to seep into my very soul. The room pulsed with malevolence, and I knew I had to escape its clutches once more. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the corridor as I put as much distance as possible between myself and the nightmarish nursery. But the music pursued me relentlessly, growing louder and more ominous with every step. It was as though the melody was playing inside my head, a cacophony of dread that threatened to consume me. Panic clawed at my chest, urging me to run faster, to escape the haunting melody that pursued me like a relentless specter. My strength waned, and I stumbled, falling to the floor and striking my head painfully against the unforgiving surface. I fought to regain my composure, my breaths coming in ragged gasps as fear continued to grip me. I struggled to my knees, my body heavy with exhaustion and dread. As I raised my head, my eyes fell upon a door that stood not far from me. It was different, unlike any door I had seen on the third floor of the mansion before. With great effort, I managed to get to my feet and stagger toward the unfamiliar door that had appeared in the hallway. My trembling hand reached for the doorknob, and I turned it slowly. The moment I pushed the door ajar, the haunting melody that had pursued me throughout the mansion abruptly ceased. The sudden silence sent a shiver down my spine, and I instinctively recoiled. But as seconds passed and nothing else happened, I summoned the courage to approach the door once more. With a deep breath, I pushed it open fully and cautiously peered into the room beyond. The darkness within was impenetrable, and I could see almost nothing. My eyes strained in the inky blackness, slowly adjusting to the lack of light. What I saw in that dimly lit room filled me with a profound sense of dread and sent goosebumps coursing across my skin. In the center of the room, there lay a grotesque mound of clothing. Pants, jackets, boots, athletic sneakers, Some worn and aged, others torn and tattered, were piled haphazardly upon one another. Backpacks and women's bags were strewn about, discarded as if in a frenzy. Yet, it was not the sight of this nightmarish clothing mountain that horrified me the most. My gaze shifted, and I spotted a sinister presence intertwined with the discarded garments, human bones. They were piled alongside the clothes, skeletal remains of unknown individuals, their twisted limbs and grim remains a testament to the horror that had unfolded within this room. Despair clenched my heart as I realized the true nature of the chamber. It was a macabre crypt, a place where death had laid claim to the living. The room was a tomb of forgotten souls, a testament to the malevolent forces that held sway within the mansion's walls. Fear threatened to paralyze me, and I took a hesitant step back, my mind struggling to comprehend the horror before me. But there was no respite, no escape from the malevolent forces that pursued me. The darkness seemed to pulse with an unseen malevolence, and the air grew heavy with an oppressive presence. As I stood frozen in terror, I heard it, an unsettling rustling sound, accompanied by heavy, labored breathing. It emanated from behind me, a menacing whisper that sent a chill through my very soul. My heart pounded in my chest, and I slowly turned to face the source of this newfound dread. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to face the source of the menacing growling and rustling behind me. What I saw froze me in terror, a sight so horrifying that it defied all reason. There, not far from me in the dimly lit hallway, stood a monstrous beast. Its fur was as black as midnight, its claws and teeth gleaming with a malevolent hunger. Its eyes, a fiery crimson, bore into me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. The creature grinned, baring its sharp, deadly teeth, and a low, guttural growl emanated from deep within its throat. It resembled a dog, but it was anything but ordinary. It was a grotesque, nightmarish incarnation of malevolence, its size and ferocity far beyond that of any natural creature. My instincts screamed at me to flee, to escape the impending doom that loomed before me. But my terror escalated as I realized that I was not alone in this surreal nightmare. A second creature, equally monstrous and fearsome, materialized behind me. It was a colossal beast with white fur, its claws and teeth as menacing as those of its ebony counterpart. It mirrored the black dog's snarling, teeth-baring grin, and its red eyes gleamed with the same malevolent intent. I was surrounded, trapped in the claustrophobic space of a corridor with monsters with no way out. Panic overwhelmed me, and I backed away from the relentless onslaught of monstrous fangs. I clearly realized my grave mistake in underestimating the sinister reputation of this abandoned mansion. As the two nightmarish creatures closed in on me, my mind raced, desperately seeking a way out. The realization of my impending demise weighed heavily upon me, and I cursed myself for my curiosity and disbelief in the ominous rumors that had surrounded this place. In my final moments, a cruel twist of fate revealed the truth to me. As I looked upon the grotesque, grinning beasts, a memory flashed before my eyes, a faded photograph I had come across during my ill-fated exploration of the mansion. It depicted the family of the bankrupt tycoon, Chester, who had once called this place home. In the photograph, Chester, a portly man with dark hair, stood proudly outside the mansion, his blonde wife at his side. Next to them, their two children, a brunette boy and a blonde girl, smiled innocently. It was a portrait of happiness, now irrevocably tainted by the malevolent curse that had befallen them. With my fate sealed, I closed my eyes and accepted the grim reality that awaited me. The monstrous beasts drew nearer, their savage hunger ready to claim its final victim, and as their fangs descended upon me, my last thoughts were of regret, knowing that I had ventured too far into the realm of the supernatural. When darkness fell, I tipped the mug of cold coffee onto my laptop with a trembling hand. By this point, I was almost finished writing my novel, but I had to hurriedly interrupt my fantasy and search my backpack for napkins to wipe the coffee off the laptop keyboard. I sat alone in the dimly lit living room of Chester's old, decrepit mansion, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating my tired face. My novel was nearly complete, and all that remained was to write the ending, a fitting demise for the book's character. The morning light filtered in through the cracked windows, casting eerie shadows across the room. exhaustion weighed heavily upon me, and I longed for the simple comforts of rest and a hot shower. Spending the night in this forsaken place had taken its toll, and I knew it was time to leave. I closed my laptop, drained the last remnants of cold coffee from my mug, and gathered my mattress, preparing to make my escape. The mansion, though faded and worn, held a certain majestic beauty in the morning light, standing as a lonely sentinel in the midst of desolation. I paused for a moment, taking one last look at the imposing structure that had held me captive for the night. The mansion seemed very lonely. As I was saying goodbye to the mansion, a window on the third floor caught my eye. Shadows moved behind the cracked glass, and my heart raced. I squinted, trying to see what I was seeing. Two figures, one a brunette boy and the other a blonde girl, appeared to be watching me from the window, or at least something that resembled children. Their gaze was fixed upon me, their presence sending a chill down my spine. Panic surged through me, and I quickly retreated to my car, the engine roaring to life. I sped away from the mansion, putting as much distance between myself and that accursed place as possible. The image of the children's spectral figures in the window haunted my thoughts. As I drove, the weight of my experiences settled upon me. I couldn't help but reflect on the choices I had made in pursuit of inspiration for my novels. It was time to put an end to these adventures, to prioritize my own well-being and sanity. The road lay ahead, and I couldn't help but think that I should get a good night's sleep first. With the keys clasped tightly in my hands, the weight of history pressed upon me, an undeniable force that whispered tales of bygone splendor and lingering tragedy. The abandoned hotel, once a majestic sanctuary nestled in the arms of nature's embrace, now stood as a crumbling relic, its former glory eclipsed by the shadows of a haunting past. As I tread through the empty halls, my footsteps reverberated, echoing the silent lament of a place frozen in time. Once, this establishment was a beacon of prosperity, a testament to opulence set against a backdrop of mountains, forests, and rivers. Nature itself seemed to caress the hotel, inviting those in search of solace and joy. Yet, the cruel hands of fate had orchestrated a devastating symphony, and a fire a decade ago had transformed this sanctuary into a desolate testament to grief. The flames claimed the former owner, his family, and the devoted staff, turning what was once vibrant and alive into a despondent shell. Since that fateful day, the hotel had become an abandoned relic, a silent witness to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. As I explored the decaying rooms, the air thick with the musty scent of decay, visions of restoration danced in my mind. Detailed blueprints unfolded, revealing a path toward resurrection. Each room held the potential to rise from the ashes, and I envisioned the day when the inn would open its doors once more, reclaiming its place in history. With ambition gleaming in my eyes and hope pulsating in my heart, I was determined to breathe new life into the dilapidated structure. The enormity of the task ahead didn't deter me. Instead, it fueled my resolve to revive the hotel and rewrite the narrative of its tragic past. The creaking doors echoed through the corridors as I made a pivotal decision. Restoration wasn't just about the physical structure. It was about reviving the very soul of the place. The key, I realized, lay in assembling a team that would infuse passion into every corner of this once majestic complex. I recognized that the success of the restoration hinged on the people I surrounded myself with. With a decisive spirit, I set out to build a team of professionals dedicated to resurrecting the hotel's former glory. Financial concerns loomed, but my passion for the hospitality business eclipsed any worries about material costs. My fortunate inheritance meant that money was not a stumbling block, and I resolved to invest every penny into realizing my long-held dream. This endeavor was not just a pursuit of profit. It was about creating a haven where every guest would bask in the warmth of home. In tandem with assessing financial investments, I meticulously contemplated the roster of staff that would breathe life back into the hotel. Taking on the role of manager, I aimed to immerse myself in every aspect of the business. The success of the endeavor rested on the shoulders of each team member. The list of positions seemed daunting. From receptionists to middle managers, customer service specialists to maids, cooks to waiters, and security and maintenance staff. Yet, I understood that each member would contribute something unique, transforming the hotel into more than a restored building, a true home for all who entered. The symphony of revival, I knew, would be orchestrated by the collective passion and dedication of the individuals who believed in the resurrection of this once majestic haven. 2 weeks later, I assembled a crew of builders and renovators and arrived at the hotel again to begin the restoration process, and the symphony of restoration was now playing its tune through the once silent halls of the hotel. My construction and renovation team, under my careful guidance, breathed life into the crumbling relic. The echoes of hammers and electric saws reverberated, creating a rhythmic soundtrack to the revival of the majestic sanctuary. I found myself engrossed in every detail, poring over blueprints and immersing myself in the intricacies of each room. This was not merely a project, it was a calling, a mission to resurrect not just the physical structure, but the very soul of the place. I understood the gravity of the task and became a vigilant overseer, ensuring that every nuance of the restoration received the attention it deserved. One day, amidst the orchestrated chaos of construction, I stood over the blueprints, mapping out the future of the hotel. My dedication to the project was palpable, a commitment that went beyond the call of duty. It's not just about rebuilding walls, it's about breathing life back into every corner, I declared, my voice echoing through the empty halls. With those words, I symbolized the essence of our shared mission. A mission to transform a despondent shell into a vibrant haven. In the midst of our fervor for restoration, a peculiar discovery awaited use in the basement. A construction worker approached Ed, a whisper of excitement in his eyes. He had stumbled upon an unusual hatch, tightly closed, an unexpected portal to the mysteries concealed beneath the hotel's foundations. Intrigued, I decided to investigate, and together with the worker, descended into the dimly lit depths. Using tools, the construction workers opened the hatch, revealing a spiral staircase leading even deeper down. An inexplicable chill coursed through the air as we descended, arriving in a spacious room resembling a cave of clay and stones imbued with antiquity. The beam of our flashlights danced upon rust-covered surfaces, revealing the contours of an iron box melded into the clay wall. Its form suggested a time long past, and as we examined it, intricate drawings and inscriptions reminiscent of ancient runes adorned its surface. The atmosphere became charged with an eerie energy, as if the walls themselves whispered forgotten tales. Attempts to pry the box from its earthen prison proved futile. It seemed bound by more than just rust and clay, resisting our efforts to unveil its secrets. A decision was made to leave the mysterious box untouched until the renovations were complete, shrouding it in an air of anticipation. More than a week had passed since the discovery of the mysterious cave and the enigmatic box. The inn, under my relentless guidance, had undergone remarkable changes, transforming from a desolate relic to a beautiful haven. Living in a mobile home next to the inn, I dedicated every waking moment to the restoration process, watching with satisfaction as the grandeur of the establishment was reborn. Anticipation for the grand opening filled my thoughts. However, amid the joyous metamorphosis, a somber note pierced through. Bill, the construction crew leader, approached me with a grave countenance. His words hung heavy in the air as he delivered disturbing news. One of our workers had gone missing. Bill recounted that the worker was last seen leaving the construction site 2 days ago, heading home after his shift. Yet, he never arrived home, nor did he return to work. The unsettling news cast a shadow over the inn's rebuilding process. Concern etched across my face. I listened intently as Bill continued. Bill reported that he had scoured the hotel and the surrounding area, discovering the missing construction worker's cell phone. The spouse, frantic with worry, had already contacted the police. The weight of the situation settled upon me, darkening the joy that had accompanied the restoration. I assured Bill that I had been present on the premises both day and night, diligently overseeing the restoration process. I hadn't noticed anything unusual after the construction workers' shift ended. Despite my frequent solitary walks through the hotel's corridors, I had not observed any unusual occurrences after the workers had left. Hope lingered in Bill's eyes as he expressed his wish for the missing man's swift return. With a heavy heart, he returned to his duties, focusing on the ongoing renovation. 2 days later, however, the specter of uncertainty returned. Another construction worker vanished, disappearing without a trace after completing his shift. The gravity of the situation deepened, casting a pall over the inn's atmosphere. Anxiety permeated the air, eclipsing the satisfaction of the ongoing transformation. Concerned murmurs circulated among the construction crew, and the once familiar halls now echoed with a disquieting unease. Bill, with furrowed brows, approached me again with the distressing news. The second missing worker's disappearance mirrored the previous incident, a departure from the construction site without a subsequent return home. Once more, a cell phone was found, left behind like an eerie breadcrumb. The police were now involved, delving into the unsettling mystery that veiled the inn's restoration. The police, clad in their solemn uniforms, arrived at the inn like harbingers of an unsettling truth. Their questions echoed through the halls, seeking answers to the mysterious disappearances of the construction workers. I, as the inn's owner, cooperated actively, guiding them through the labyrinthine corridors and assisting in the search for potential clues. Despite our collective efforts, the interviews yielded no leads, no evidence to unravel the enigma that veiled the inn. The police, frustrated by the absence of tangible findings, left, leaving the unsettling mystery unresolved. I, bound by the ongoing restoration, couldn't personally delve into the intricacies of the investigation at the police department. The inn, now a hive of construction activity, buzzed with the sounds of hammers and saws as the first phase of repairs and restoration neared completion. The dichotomy between the relentless work and the unresolved disappearances cast a disconcerting pall over the once celebrated transformation. I stayed on the premises, hope and unease coexisting within me. Each step carried the weight of responsibility, and every crack in the floorboards seemed to whisper secrets. The hotel, with its hidden cave and the mysterious box, harbored an inexplicable darkness. Plans for the second phase of renovation were underway, and the air buzzed with anticipation as Bill and I discussed details and plans. The inn, poised on the brink of a new chapter, held the promise of transformation. Little did we know, the impending revelation would shatter the thin veil between the known and the unknown. A construction worker, panic etched across his face, came hurtling towards us. Urgency hung thick in the air as he urgently beckoned us to follow. Without hesitation, Bill and I trailed behind, the corridor stretching ominously before us. The weight of uncertainty settled upon our shoulders, the echo of our footsteps resonating with an underlying disquiet. As we descended into the dimly lit basement, a gathering of builders stood in hushed conversation. The atmosphere was dense with foreboding. The worker who had led us pointed towards the hatch, a portal to the mysteries that lurked beneath the inn. The descent down the spiral staircase felt like a journey into the abyss. The air grew colder, and shadows danced along the walls, creating grotesque silhouettes. The flickering light offered glimpses of the cave, a space imbued with an ancient eeriness that intensified the sense of the unknown. The builders, huddled in a somber assembly, parted as Bill and I approached. A ghastly sight awaited us. The mangled corpse of a man lay amidst the subterranean darkness. Time seemed to freeze as the gravity of the discovery sank in. Bill, as if struck by an unseen force, froze in his tracks. A guttural cry escaped his lips, a primal sound that shattered the oppressive silence. "It's Daniel!" he exclaimed, his voice carrying a blend of disbelief and horror. In that moment, the basement became a chamber of despair, the walls bearing witness to the unfolding tragedy. With a desperate urgency, Bill rushed towards the lifeless form of his younger brother. His cries reverberated through the cavernous space, a symphony of grief that echoed the inexplicable horror of the situation. "Call the doctors, call the police! Someone, please help!" Bill's pleas cut through the stillness, a desperate plea for a lifeline in the face of an unthinkable loss. The builders, now witnesses to a scene of profound anguish, fumbled with their phones, dialing numbers with shaky hands. The basement, once a hidden realm, became a stage for a familial tragedy that transcended the boundaries of the living. As I stood amidst the unfolding sorrow, The builder who had led us to the grim discovery directed our attention to the mysterious box. Bricked up in the wall, it stood as a silent sentinel to the macabre scene. I approached it, the torn lid lying beside it like a sinister relic. The emptiness within mirrored the void, left by Daniel's untimely demise. The police, clad in their authoritative blue, arrived swiftly, transforming the basement into a realm of investigation. Yellow tape cordoned off the site of Bill's younger brother's tragic demise, a grim reminder that the once hopeful inn had now become a scene of horror. Amidst the whispers of the investigators and the uneasy shuffling of the remaining construction workers, a heavy decree echoed through the dimly lit corridors. "Disperse to your homes," the police commanded, their voices cutting through the thick tension that hung in the air. The inn, once alive with the hum of restoration, now stood eerily silent. The investigators turned their attention to the mysterious box, examining it with a scrutiny that suggested they were grappling with forces beyond the realm of the rational. The air in the basement seemed charged with an unsettling energy, a residue of the unknown that clung to every crevice. The directive was clear. No one was to enter the basement. The once bustling construction site fell into an eerie stillness as work on the hotel came to a grinding halt. The construction workers, already unnerved by the mysterious disappearances, had no desire to return to a place tainted by death. Caught in the web of uncertainty, I found myself at a crossroads. The dream of restoring the inn clashed with the grim reality that now shadowed its every corner. The reputation of the hotel, once a beacon of promise, had crumbled like ancient walls, leaving behind a haunted legacy. With a heavy heart, I made a difficult decision. The inn, once envisioned as a revived sanctuary, would be put up for sale. The notion of completing the renovation and reopening the hotel seemed futile, the lingering specter of tragedy dissuading any hopeful prospects. The construction workers dispersed, leaving behind the skeletal structure of halted dreams. The inn, once pulsating with the promise of new life, now stood as a mausoleum of shattered aspirations. Yet, despite the haunting pall that hung over the inn, I chose to remain in the mobile home near its grounds. The beauty of the place, now tainted by tragedy, still held a strange allure. I was hungry. It was gnawing at me from the inside out, and I couldn't leave it like that and just walk away. The hunger to witness the transformation persisted, even as the inn itself faced an uncertain fate. Late at night, as the shadows stretched their long fingers across the inn, I was jolted from the cusp of sleep by an ominous noise emanating from the hotel. Alarm coursed through my veins, compelling me to investigate the unsettling disturbance. Armed with a flashlight, I treaded the corridors, each step resonating with the regret of misplaced dreams. The inn had transformed in ways unimaginable. The once weathered walls stood proud in their newfound glory, adorned with chandeliers that cast an ethereal glow. Rooms, once filled with decay, now boasted new furniture that whispered tales of an unseen hand guiding the metamorphosis. Regret clawed at me, regret for pouring heart and fortune into a venture that now seemed like a futile pursuit. As I wandered through the opulent halls, the noise persisted, a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the depths below. It led me to the basement, a place that had become a nexus of tragedy and inexplicable occurrences. The weight of wasted time bore down on me, each step a testament to the futility of my endeavors. The noise grew clearer as I approached the cellar. A cacophony of indistinct murmurs and rustlings reverberated, creating an unsettling symphony that resonated with the darkened corridors. With a deep breath, I mustered the courage to confront the source of the disturbance. The cellar door swung open, revealing a void that seemed to devour the feeble light of my flashlight. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the subterranean silence. No response greeted me, only the chilling stillness of the basement. Undeterred, I descended into the abyss, my senses heightened and alert to the unknown that lurked in the shadows. The hatch, once tightly sealed, stood ajar once again. The noise ceased as I approached, leaving an eerie silence that hung thick in the air. A sudden movement startled me. A head emerged from the hatch, followed by the figure of a man. Recognition struck like a bolt of lightning. It was Bill. His disheveled appearance, haunted eyes reflecting sorrow and madness, sent shivers down my spine. The man before me was a mere semblance of the Bill I once knew. "Why are you here, Bill?" I inquired, my voice tinged with a mixture of concern and disbelief. Bill's response cut through the stillness like a knife. "Revenge," he uttered, his words laden with a weight that transcended the physical realm. Bill's eyes bore into mine, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within their depths. He spoke of the evil unleashed from the depths of the hatch, an evil that claimed the lives of construction workers and, most painfully, his own brother. Bill's conviction painted a narrative of malevolence that defied reason. In his hands, Bill clutched dynamite, a killing revelation that sent shockwaves through the recesses of my mind. The intention was clear: to obliterate the inn, to purge the malevolence that festered within its walls. As the gravity of Bill's words settled, I stood frozen, grappling with the decision that loomed before me. Bill's eyes, clouded by a madness born of grief, held a dangerous spark that cautioned against defiance. I chose to tread cautiously, my instincts urging restraint in the face of a brewing storm. Silence loomed heavy in the basement as Bill continued his grim task of arranging the dynamite, transforming the once hallowed space into a chamber of impending destruction. My gaze remained fixed on the volatile arsenal, the weight of the situation pressing down on me like a leaden shroud. Despite the urgent need to intervene, a primal instinct urged caution. Bill, consumed by desperation and a thirst for retribution, seemed to teeter on the precipice of madness. Engaging him in conversation seemed the only thread to tether him from the brink. "Bill," I began cautiously, my voice breaking the silence that enveloped us. "We can't resort to this without understanding why. Tell me, why do you believe evil resides in this basement?" Bill paused, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a mixture of dread and conviction. He spoke of events a decade past, events that went beyond the tragic fire that had scarred this place. According to him, former employees, survivors of that fateful time, spoke of encounters with malevolent forces. "The fire is only his part of the story, really," Bill explained, his voice a low murmur in the eerie stillness. "The former owner, he found a treasure beneath this very ground, used the money to build this place. But there's more down there, hidden. Something terrible that guarded that treasure. Evil that destroyed the owner's family and him. Martin, it's awakened again," Bill continued, a tremor in his voice. "And we have to stop it before it consumes everything. The evil, it's here, and it's real." His words hung in the air, and for a moment I found myself entranced by the narrative. Without uttering a word, I picked up the explosives, the cold metal pressing against my palms. I started helping Bill lay out the explosives in the basement. The dim light in the basement flickered, casting dancing shadows on the worn-out walls as Bill stood, mouth agape, staring at me in disbelief. He couldn't comprehend why I, the owner of the hotel, was actively assisting in the destruction of my own establishment. "Why, Martin?" Bill stammered, his voice tinged with confusion. "Why are you helping destroy your own hotel?" I shrugged, the weight of the past and the present converging on me. "It's high time to be rid of this place," I replied, my tone distant. "I love it here, the forest, the mountains, the rivers, but it used to be much more interesting." Bill, still processing my unexpected admission, urged me to explain further. With a heavy sigh, I delved into the distant past, revealing a history entwined with the very fabric of the hotel and the land it stood upon. "When I first came here 300 years ago," I began, memories of a bygone era flashing before my eyes. "There was a small hut that welcomed travelers. The land was untamed, with fewer people. That's when I got the urge to go into the hotel business." A wistful look crossed my face as I recounted the inception of my dream, a dream that had been disrupted by an unforeseen twist of fate. I fell asleep, and when I woke up, someone had torn down the beautiful cabin on the mountain and erected this building without even consulting me, I continued, bitterness creeping into my voice. They disposed of my inheritance, my treasure. I had to take matters into my own hands. Bill's shock lingered as I shared the darker aspects of my history. I admitted to succumbing to a primal hunger, consuming those who dared to infringe upon what was rightfully mine. I had to eat those impertinent people, I confessed, my eyes locking with Bill's. But then I traveled, and when I returned, I wanted to fulfill my dream again. Yet, my own stupidity and hunger led me to sin once more. I ate a couple of people and your brother. He showed up. Well, when I was busy? Sorry. Bill, still grappling with the revelation, attempted to speak, but before he could utter a word, a sudden transformation overcame me. The air crackled with an otherworldly energy as my form shifted, the bones in my body rearranging themselves with an audible crack. In the blink of an eye, I became a creature of the night, a werewolf. My snarling visage and razor-sharp claws replaced the image of the innkeeper that Bill had known just moments before. A gasp escaped Bill's lips as he stumbled backward, the realization of the supernatural horror before him settling like a heavy fog. Before he could react, I seized him, my lupine strength dragging him down the spiral staircase and into the hidden cave below. The cave, a forgotten chamber beneath the hotel, echoed with the sound of dripping water and the distant howls of the wind. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and ancient symbols adorned the walls, telling a story of a time long before the hotel stood above. The town of Ravenswood nestled deep within the dense woods, far from the noise and chaos of the city. I had moved there to escape the tumultuous pace of urban life, seeking peace and solitude. Little did I know, the tranquility of Ravenswood was but a facade concealing the horrors that lay beneath. The year was 1978, and I had arrived in town with a backpack full of dreams and a desire for a simpler existence. I rented a small, quaint cottage on the outskirts of the town. It was there that I began to notice the oddities, the peculiarities that set Ravenswood apart. The townsfolk, though friendly enough, had an air of unease about them. At the local pub, I struck up a conversation with a weathered old man named Edgar. His words would haunt me for the rest of my days. "The woods, boy," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "The woods are not what they seem. There are things out there, things that should never be seen." I dismissed his words as the ramblings of an old man, but they lingered in my mind. I decided to explore the forest, believing that a closer connection with nature would soothe my growing unease. Also, I was a very curious guy, and this time that character trait of mine almost got me killed. The forest was dense and foreboding, with towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly towards the heavens. As I ventured deeper, the world around me grew silent. Even the birds dared not sing in this eerie wilderness. As I ventured deeper into the dense woods surrounding Ravenswood, the silence was deafening. The eerie stillness of the forest sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in this ancient wilderness. Every step I took seemed to echo through the trees, breaking the unnatural hush. My unease grew as I noticed peculiar markings on the trees, claw-like scratches etched into the bark. I couldn't fathom what creature could have left such marks, and I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees growing taller and more ominous. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over me like a heavy shroud. I had no compass, and before I knew it, I was completely disoriented, unable to discern which direction would lead me back to the safety of my cottage. Time lost meaning as I continued to wander deeper into the woods. Panic began to well up inside me, threatening to consume my rational thoughts. I desperately tried to retrace my steps, but the trees all looked the same, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. It was then that I heard it, a low, guttural growl that froze me in my tracks. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, and there, emerging from the shadowy undergrowth, was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen. It was a massive, hulking figure, covered in matted fur, with glowing yellow eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. The creature's snout was elongated, its teeth sharp and glistening in the muted light filtering through the trees. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. I had no weapons, no means to defend myself against this monstrous presence. Fear paralyzed me, and I could only watch as the creature drew nearer, its growls growing louder and more menacing. As it lunged at me, instincts kicked in, and I managed to dive to the side, narrowly avoiding its deadly jaws. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I scrambled to my feet and sprinted blindly through the woods, branches clawing at my face and thorns tearing at my clothes. I ran until I could run no more, finally collapsing in a tangled mess of limbs and fear. The creature had disappeared, But I knew I was still deep within the heart of the forest, far from the safety of Ravenswood. My mind reeled with the realization that something truly unnatural lurked in these woods. I was no longer a spectator in a horror story. I was a character trapped in one. The quaint town of Ravenswood had concealed its dark secret well, and I had stumbled upon it, unprepared and defenseless. My encounter with the monstrous creature had left me shaken to the core. I remained sprawled on the forest floor, gasping for breath, my mind struggling to comprehend the horrors I had just witnessed. As the adrenaline subsided, a sense of vulnerability washed over me. I had no way of knowing if the creature would return, and my only option was to try and find my way back to Ravenswood. But the woods had become an ever-shifting labyrinth, and the path I had taken was lost to me. I rose unsteadily to my feet, my legs aching from the frantic escape. The forest seemed to whisper with malevolent intent, the rustling leaves and creaking branches creating an eerie symphony of dread. Every shadow held the potential for danger, every rustle in the underbrush a source of terror. I began to move cautiously, trying to retrace my steps while keeping an eye out for any signs that might lead me back to civilization. The forest, however, seemed intent on thwarting my efforts. Trees shifted, paths disappeared, and the terrain morphed before my very eyes. Hours stretched into what felt like an eternity as I wandered deeper into the darkness, each step taking me further from the safety of the town. Fear gnawed at the edges of my sanity, threatening to consume me whole. I yearned for the familiarity of streetlights and the comforting hum of city life. The moon cast an eerie glow through the canopy of leaves, revealing glimpses of grotesque, gnarled roots and twisted foliage. It was in that ghostly illumination that I saw more of the claw-like markings etched into the trees, confirming that I was not alone in this nightmarish realm. My throat grew dry, and the pit of my stomach churned with hunger. I had no supplies, no food or water, and exhaustion began to overtake me. My mind teetered on the edge of delirium, and I started to question whether I would ever escape this living nightmare. But then, just as hope began to wane, I stumbled upon a narrow, winding trail, almost hidden amidst the oppressive undergrowth. It was different from the other paths I had encountered, less menacing, more inviting. With renewed determination, I followed it, praying it would lead me out of this cursed forest. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that the woods were watching me, that unseen eyes were tracking my every move. I quickened my pace, determined to reach the end of this terrible ordeal. Little did I know that the horrors of Ravenswood were not confined to the woods alone. The town itself held secrets darker than I could ever have imagined, and my quest for escape had only just begun. The narrow trail I had discovered wound its way through the forest, leading me deeper into the heart of this otherworldly wilderness. Though it felt like I was escaping the horrors that had pursued me, a growing unease gnawed at my soul. The forest was no longer my only fear. I now questioned the very nature of Ravenswood itself. Hours stretched into what felt like an eternity as I wandered, directionless, through the oppressive woods. The moon, my only companion, cast its eerie glow upon my path, offering little solace. My energy waned, and my steps grew heavier with each passing moment. At long last, I emerged from the woods, stumbling into the outskirts of another town. The moonlight illuminated a sign at the town's entrance. "Welcome to Riverside." Relief washed over me as I realized I had escaped the cursed forest that had held me captive. I was very tired. I wanted to eat, shower, and go to bed. All this I could find in the nearest hotel. However, the first thing I started looking for was the police station. I could not ignore everything that had happened to me. The city seemed unaccustomedly quiet, almost lifeless. Eventually, wandering through town, I met an elderly man sitting on a porch, with a face mottled with wrinkles and a melancholy look in his eyes. I cautiously approached him, and in a trembling voice asked, "Sir, could you please point out the police station?" The old man was silent for a few seconds, and instead of answering, he asked me where I came from. I said I was lost in the woods, but I came from the town of Ravenswood. The old man smiled at me. That smile sent shivers down my spine. "Ravenswood. There is no way," he said. "This is a town shrouded in darkness. Years ago, many tragic events and unexplained deaths occurred in Ravenswood. People began to disappear. A curse came from this forest. He continued. In the end, most of us couldn't take it anymore. We left Ravenswood behind, hoping to escape the horrors that had consumed it. The town was abandoned, its secrets buried with it. I listened in disbelief as the man recounted the grim history of Ravenswood. It seemed the town had been plagued by the very terrors I had encountered in the forest. The old man concluded, "We don't know what became of Ravenswood. They say ghosts live there, so you're a ghost. The ghost of a scared puppy." And the old man began to laugh. His words frightened me, and I was also frightened by his behavior, so I hurried to get away from the old man. As I walked along the streets, I felt uneasy, and the old man's laughter was ringing in my ears. The question that bothered me was, have I taken to a strange little town again? But in the end, it all turned out all right. I found the police station and told everything that had happened to me. To my surprise, the policemen did not laugh at me. They only exchanged worried glances among themselves. One of them even gave me a friendly pat on the shoulder. The next day, they brought me the things I had left behind in Ravenswood and asked me never to return to that damn town again. Since then, I've preferred to live in big metropolitan areas. As I set foot in the quaint, remote village of Blackthorne, nestled amidst the thick woods of the Scottish Highlands, I could sense the eerie stillness that hung in the air. My journey here had been long and arduous, but the mysterious letter that had summoned me was filled with a sense of urgency that I could not ignore. I am Dr. Jonathan Aldridge, a physician by trade, and it was a professional matter that led me to this desolate place. The letter, bearing no signature but penned in an elegant script, spoke of a malady that had befallen the villagers, a sickness unlike any I had ever heard of in my years of medical practice. The journey from Inverness was treacherous, the mist-shrouded moors a labyrinthine maze that seemed to deter any outsider from reaching Blackthorne. It was a place forgotten by time, where ancient superstitions and pagan rituals still held sway over the hearts of its residents. The villagers, upon my arrival, regarded me with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The pallor of their skin and the gauntness of their faces were evidence of the affliction that had befallen them. I was led to the humble dwelling of the village elder, an enigmatic figure named Alistair McRae. "Dr. Aldridge," he greeted me with a voice as weathered as the landscape. "I am Alistair McRae, the eldest of this village. We have summoned you in our darkest hour, for we are plagued by a malevolent curse, one that has haunted our ancestors for centuries." He spoke of a curse that struck the villagers, one by one, during the full moon. They transformed into savage beasts, driven by an insatiable hunger for flesh. They had named it the Curse of the Wolf. A shiver coursed through my spine as I listened to his tale, a feeling of disbelief mixed with dread. Superstitions and folklore were not unfamiliar to me, but I had always approached them with a skeptical eye. Yet, the fear etched on the faces of the villagers and the strange wounds on their bodies could not be denied. My first evening in Blackthorne was spent in my modest lodgings, where I unpacked my medical instruments and books. I could not ignore the urgency of the situation, and the responsibility of saving these afflicted souls weighed heavily on my shoulders. The following day, I embarked on my mission to understand the nature of this Curse of the Wolf. I ventured to the homes of those who had been affected, each visit revealing a more disturbing truth. The first victim, Mrs. Elspeth Munro, lived in a quaint cottage at the outskirts of the village. Her husband, a strapping young man named Callum, had recounted the harrowing night when his wife had transformed into a feral beast. The marks on her arms, inflicted by her own claws, were as clear as day. As I examined Mrs. Munro's wounds, she recounted the terrifying ordeal in a trembling voice. She spoke of a hunger that consumed her, a compulsion to hunt and kill that overtook her rational mind. It was as though she were a passenger in her own body, unable to control the beast within. The second victim, young Ewan McGregor, displayed similar wounds. His parents, Agnes and Douglas, wept as they described the night their son had become a monster. Ewan himself, though still a boy, spoke of the darkness that had enveloped him, a darkness that had made him commit unspeakable acts. My examination revealed nothing medically aberrant in the victims. No toxins, no infections, nothing that could explain their transformation into ravenous creatures during the full moon. In the evening, I sought out the village herbalist, a wizened woman named Moira, who had a reputation for knowledge of the occult. She spoke in hushed tones of a dark ritual performed by the village's ancestors, a pact with an otherworldly entity that granted them power but also condemned them to this curse. Moira believed that an ancient artifact, the Amulet of the Moon, held the key to breaking the curse. She claimed that it had been hidden away for generations and was said to be guarded by a malevolent spirit deep within the nearby woods. My investigation had led me to a crossroads, a choice between delving further into the occult or adhering to the principles of science. The people of Blackthorne, however, were desperate, and the horrors they had endured could not be explained by rational means alone. With the guidance of Moira, I set out into the foreboding woods to seek the Amulet of the Moon. The moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting eerie shadows that danced at the edges of my vision. The air was thick with an oppressive presence that made my skin prickle. As I ventured deeper into the woods, I felt the weight of countless eyes upon me, unseen entities that watched my every move. My heart raced, and my lantern flickered ominously. It was then that I heard a guttural growl, low and menacing. I turned to find myself face to face with a monstrous creature, a wolf, but unlike any I had ever seen. Its eyes burned with an unnatural intelligence, and its snarl revealed rows of teeth stained with fresh blood. In the tense moments that followed, I reached for the revolver I had brought with me, praying that it would be enough to fend off the beast. But before I could fire a shot, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving me trembling in its wake. With renewed determination, I continued my search and, against all odds, stumbled upon a hidden grove. There, beneath the gnarled roots of an ancient oak tree, I found the Amulet of the Moon, a small silver pendant adorned with a crescent moon. The discovery of the Amulet of the Moon had cast a long shadow over my thoughts. As I clutched the silver pendant in my trembling hand, I couldn't help but wonder about the eerie connection between this artifact and the terrifying transformations plaguing the villagers of Blackthorne. Moira had been right about its significance, but its true purpose remained shrouded in mystery. The pendant felt strangely cold against my skin. With the amulet safely tucked into my coat pocket, I made my way back to the village. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting an eerie glow over the darkened woods. My encounter with the monstrous wolf had left me unnerved, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent was lurking in the shadows. Upon my return, I sought out Moira once more, eager to delve deeper into the history of the amulet and the curse that had befallen Blackthorne. She greeted me with a solemn nod and beckoned me to sit by the flickering fire in her dimly lit hut. "You've found the amulet, Dr. Aldridge," she whispered, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. "But do ye understand what it means? The moon holds great power in these lands, and the pendant is a key to unlocking its mysteries." Moira went on to explain that the Amulet of the Moon was said to have been created by the village's founding ancestors, a relic born of a desperate pact with an otherworldly entity. In exchange for power and protection, the villagers had willingly bound themselves to the lunar cycle, subjecting themselves to the curse of the wolf. "The creature ye encountered in the woods," Moira continued, "is but one manifestation of the curse. It is a guardian, protecting the amulet from those who would seek to break the ancient bond. It is said that the only way to end the curse is to return the pendant to its rightful resting place." I felt a chill run down my spine as Moira's words sank in. It was a daunting prospect, but the suffering of the villagers weighed heavily on my conscience. As the days passed and the full moon drew nearer, a sense of foreboding settled over Blackthorne. The night of the full moon arrived, and with it, an oppressive silence descended upon Blackthorne. The villagers had retreated to their homes, their faces etched with fear and resignation. Moira and Alistair accompanied me to the woods, where we would confront the malevolent spirit guarding the Amulet of the Moon. The forest seemed to come alive with a sinister energy as we approached the hidden grove. The moon hung in the sky, casting an eerie silver light that danced through the dense canopy. I clutched the amulet tightly, its cold metal offering a meager sense of reassurance. As we reached the grove, a low, haunting hum filled the air, emanating from the ancient oak tree. Shadows moved within the gnarled roots, and a spectral figure materialized before us, a wraith-like entity with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce the depths of my soul. It then let out a mournful wail, and the ground trembled beneath our feet. From the earth, grotesque shapes emerged, twisted, monstrous creatures that bore a semblance to wolves, but were far more nightmarish in appearance. My companions and I set off at a run. Fear drove us forward. The werewolves, cursed and tormented, pursued us relentlessly. Their eyes gleamed with hunger, and their feral instincts drove them to capture us and prevent us from breaking the curse. The werewolves closed in, their snarls and growls echoing through the night. With the amulet clutched tightly in my hand, I knew there was only one way to end this nightmare. I made a final sprint towards the ancient oak tree, the werewolves hot on my heels. With a burst of strength and courage, I thrust the amulet of the moon into the earth beneath the tree. The ground trembled, and a blinding light enveloped the grove. The werewolves howled in agony as the curse that had tormented them for so long was lifted. When the light finally faded, the village of Blackthorne was free from the curse. The werewolves lay still, their monstrous forms replaced by their human selves.